Nations. Madam Sara Paharaki, Global Youth Ambassador. Global Ambassador of the Third World and representative of the Major Group for Children and Youth. Excellencies, distinguished authorities, delegates, youth leaders, friends, I'm honored to welcome all of you to the Youth Forum for ECOSOC 2024. This day, young people from around the world have coordinated, organized, and are meeting in order to think globally about the same concern, how to strengthen the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development and to eradicate poverty at a time of multiple crises. We have gotten used to hearing about crises as being a sort of condemnation, but now I'd like to begin with an invitation. Let's look at crisis in another way. In this forum, the global youth has called upon us to change our discourse. We will speak about the multiple crises as a question, a problem, but above all, as an appeal for hope. In 1948, the Gabriel Mistral, the Nobel Prize laureate, said to the young people of all the planet, and I quote, "You are coming and giving us the impetus that we needed, what we were lacking," end of quote. This force is renewed today with your presence. We recognize what is necessary for our time, what you are requiring of us. And while the time is running, at ECOSOC, we express our commitment to you and our faith in you. Global youth, we understand your dreams for a better and more inclusive future for all. For centuries, being a young person was synonymous of change, progress in the future. You, the new generations, have shown us that being young in the present day is also being responsible. The voice of youth has once again adjusted our ethics, because let's confess it, this anguish has led us to a pessimistic time which is no longer justifiable. The young people of the world are asking us about our responsibility for peace in the world and the ecological balance. Your enthusiasm and determination are crucial for the success designed to tackle the global challenges and to build a world which is more just and more sustainable. Your ideals are the music of a humankind which is not giving up hope. Hope that better days will come. For decades, the young people have accompanied the United Nations. They have nourished us with their endless imagination that looks at the world with surprise of what we can imagine, the joy but also the pain of others. 60 years ago, the Declaration on the Promotion of Youth and Mutual Comprehension among Peoples said that after the war, the young people were the ones who most suffered and who had the greatest number of victims. The same statement proclaimed that the education of young people, as well as the ideas in the spirit of peace, mutual respect, and understanding among peoples, could contribute to improve international relations and to strengthen peace and security. And here we see the paradox. Those who suffered the greatest violence are the ones who are bringing us the greatest hope to overcome it. Your presence here in this forum is proof that this promise is being complied with the shadow of a global reactivation with armed conflict. And you once again represent an opportunity for peace and the spirit of cooperation and multilateralism. Our youth forum, and I say our youth forum, sustains that the young people of the world also have a greater opportunity for equality. In the next 3 days, the ambitious agenda, our roadmap will be discussed, and the impact of the SDGs, 1, poverty, 2, zero hunger, and 3, action for climate, 16, peace and solid institutions, and 17, an alliance for the achievement of the objectives. All of these will be reviewed in the high-level political forum in July. Once again, young people goes beyond the pace of history. And these goals are fundamental in our fight against poverty, which increasingly is getting tougher. And today, only a third of the countries are on the path to reducing their levels of poverty for 2030. 7% of the global population, 570 million people, are suffering extreme poverty. But once again, among those who suffer the most are the young people, who are significant parts of the global population affected by poverty. Where we must find opportunities, we see barriers to have access to education and to decent employment, as well as economic opportunities. 586 million of 1.1 billion poor people in the world are under the age of 18, and they are fighting against inadequate infrastructure to break the intergenerational cycle of inequality. We know that poverty seriously limits the prospects for development among young people, thus perpetuating the cycle. We have to do more for our young people. A part of the response is including them in the public decisions. Changes in legislation do not adequately reflect the concerns directed towards young people, namely due to the lack of representation of young people in the national decision-making processes. This forum is an international effort to give a voice to that necessary representation. When we talk about young people, along with the political challenges, there's also the educational challenge. The young people of the world have to develop themselves and become educated to face challenges that we have never faced before. We have spent decades preparing ourselves for an interconnected world linked to the dreams of technology. Today, as Learning Compass of 2030 pointed out, we have to prepare the young people to tackle an interdependent world that includes their training and education and global citizenship. And it's in this sense that your experience, young people of the world, is essential, because you're the ones who best understand the new requirements of creating value, taking responsibility, and focusing on the dilemmas that we find in politics, as well as in the new global dynamic of the labor market. You have taken technology and you have humanized it. Once again, I can testify to your ambition and your commitment to use the digital world to project your voices, to build networks, and to generate tangible impacts, which would make it possible to imagine a better world. Colleagues, friends, usually we talk about the leaders of tomorrow, but you are the leaders of today, of the present. From the ECOSOC Youth Forum, you can play an active role with member states, UN entities, and other visionary young people to trace the path and to take a concrete action in order to direct us towards sustainable development. Here, your ideas and your contributions are not only heeded, but they're also the motor of transformation that our world needs. I'd like to point out along these lines that the Youth Forum will focus on the Summit of the Future, an important intergovernmental agreement that aims to strengthen international cooperation, solidarity, and the effectiveness of the response to new threats and opportunities, as well as to accelerate the implementation of our Agenda 2030. Your contributions and your enthusiasm and boldness are fundamental in this process. And today, of many hopes, ECOSOC invites you, without exclusion, to claim the voice that you deserve, and to point out that young people are not a homogenous community, and hence we have to promote the diversity of the voices. The youth participation should be valued in different contexts, having substantive participation for women, girls, Indigenous persons, rural workers, persons with disabilities, LGBTQ plus people, cultural and ethnic minorities, as well as religious minorities. They share and bring together their ideas. they inspire themselves and inspire the rest of the world. I'm awaiting your participatory conversations in the next 3 days. This space belongs to you. Thank you very much.
Invito ahora al secretario.
I now invite the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, to address the forum.
Dear friends, welcome to the ECOSOC Youth Forum, and thank you for your presence and your engagement. The energy and conviction of young people are infectious and more vital than ever. Our world is bristling with challenges, tragedies, and injustices, many of them linked. The Sustainable Development Goals are way off track. This means children hungry, families trapped in poverty, and young people out of school. The climate crisis is spiraling downward as emissions continue to rise and the fossil fuel industry, in its immense greed, tries to block change at every turn. Great rifts within and between countries are fueling mistrust and eroding solidarity. Inequality and poverty are rife, polarization and hate are spreading, stoked by digital transformation and division. Human rights are under attack and conflicts are raging around the world. Israel's military operations in Gaza, following the devastating terror attacks by Hamas on 7 October, are having an appalling impact on civilians, including young people. Thousands of children have been killed, thousands more have lost one or both parents. And 100% of young people in Gaza, every single child, is out of school. It is high time for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, the unconditional release of all hostages, the protection of civilians, and the unimpeded delivery of humanitarian aid. Dear friends, in the face of all these crises, public trust is plummeting, alienation is growing, and the international system is cracking. The future of multilateralism is at stake. And so we need action and we need justice. And I salute young people around the world for standing up, speaking out, and working for real change. We need you. I'm fully committed to bringing young people into political decision-making, not just listening to your views, but acting on them. We established a new youth office in the United Nations to advance advocacy, coordination, participation, and accountability for and with young people. We will renew the United Nations Youth Strategy to take this work to the next level. And I'm committed to making sure young people have a strong role as we gear up for the Summit of the Future in September. That includes this forum's discussion, virtual consultations on the Pact for the Future, which will include a chapter on youth and future generations, and your work mobilizing in your communities. We are also holding a youth-led action day as the summit begins, so that your voices are heard from the start. Dear friends, the Summit of the Future is a pivotal moment to turbocharge the SDGs and reinvigorate multilateralism. We have already put forward a number of concrete ideas on strengthening youth engagement for member states to consider. This includes establishing national youth consultative bodies, a global standard for meaningful youth engagement in decision-making, and creating a UN Youth Town Hall. We are also working to advance a global digital compact to help build a world where digital technologies support sustainable development, including education and jobs for young people. A world where children and young people are protected online, benefit from digital technologies, and have a say in the decisions shaping digital life. We have created a high-level advisory body on artificial intelligence to make recommendations on international governance of AI. This group of experts is gender balanced. It includes young leaders and people from the global south, and it is feeding into the global digital compact. We have also proposed a new agenda for peace to renew and strengthen multilateral security frameworks and to embed young people's participation in peace and security institutions that are funded in full. As we are pushing for reform of the United Nations Security Council and the fundamental overhaul of the international financial architecture, we count on youth engagement and leadership. Many of today's developing countries have no voice when those institutions were established 8 decades ago. These systems were designed by the rich and remain controlled by the rich, and are failing in some of their most basic functions. We must shake off the relics of the past and create institutions that reflect the world today and serve its needs. This is a matter of justice. Dear friends, I urge all member states to get behind our proposals, and I ask young people to join forces with allies and partners across civil society to demand that governments make the summit count. You can start by supporting the Summit of the Future Digital campaigns we are launching today. Take on the Act Now challenge and share it with your networks to show leaders how many of us demand a sustainable future for all. And sign the open letter to world leaders on reviving multilateralism, launched today by the United Nations Youth Office. Beyond the Summit of the Future, I salute young people for being on the front lines for bold climate action. Our climate is in meltdown, and the poorest are paying the price. This is breathtaking injustice and a terrible betrayal of your generation. Governments need to adopt strong policies to accelerate the global phase-out of fossil fuels and the just transition to clean energy. And they need to create new national climate plans by 2025 that align with 1.5 degrees Celsius limit. And they need to bring young people into this work meaningfully. The transition to renewables must be just, and it must be sustainable. And we will soon launch our panel on critical energy transition minerals to help to ensure developing countries benefit fully from this transition. My youth advisory group on climate change will have a seat on this panel and will help to engage young people in its work. Developed countries must also keep their promises on climate finance, and governments must make generous contributions to the new Loss and Damage Fund as a step towards climate justice. And we must all push to get finance flowing to sustainable development more broadly to turbocharge the Sustainable Development Goals. That includes countries backing and implementing our plans for an SDG stimulus and supporting deep reforms to the multilateral development banks. Dear friends, every generation serves as caretaker of this world. Let's be honest, mine has been careless with that responsibility. But yours gives me hope. The United Nations stands with you, and together let's deliver justice, let's deliver solutions, and let's create a world of peace and prosperity for all, and I thank you.
I warmly thank the Secretary General for joining us this morning and for his statement. I now invite Ms. Sarah Baharaki, Global Youth Ambassador of Their World and representative of the Major Group for Children and Youth, to deliver a statement. Ms. Baharaki, you have the floor.
Mrs. President, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, and my friends, Salam. Behind every story coming from conflicted zones, it is resilient youth bearing the heaviest burden. Their dreams shattered, their rights trampled, and their future obscured by the shadows of uncertainty. Let me paint a vivid picture with the story of Arya, a symbol of courage amidst adversity. Arya, an Afghan woman, has lived under the Taliban regime twice in her life. As a young girl with unattained dreams, and as a mom witnessing the same fate for her daughter. She was just 14 years old when the Taliban first took over Afghanistan in 1996. They closed her school doors, and she was left with all those dreams. Due to the financial hardship her family was facing, she was forced into marriage at that young age. But did she give up? The answer is no, she did not. But she waited for the right time. She did not give up and waited for the right time. So when the Taliban regime collapsed in 2001, and the international community's intervention provided a safer environment for women, she resumed her studies. She finished her school, obtained a university degree, and sustained a job. All was going good until the life played its part again. And sadly, she lost her husband to an explosion in 2020. She became the only breadwinner for the family, playing both a role of a mom and a dad. But she was doing it perfectly, supporting her children both financially and morally, until the story repeats, when the Taliban takes over Afghanistan again in 2021. Thousands fled the country to save their lives, including myself, and millions of others stayed and hoped that the Taliban might have changed. But this remained only a hope. The Taliban once again closed the school doors on girls. One of thousands was Arya's daughter, and banned women from working, where Arya herself fell a victim. Although Arya's daughter is living the same fate her mother did, witnessing the closure of the school doors and other girls' rights taken away from them, but the story is a bit different this time. Not the situation itself, but the way that young generation deals with the situation is different this time. This time, youth refuse to remain silent. They no longer wait for an army or another regime to fight for them. Instead, they take the matters into their own hands. Both mother and daughter attend every protest organized by Afghan women, raising their voices and fearlessly advocating for their rights, together with thousands of other women. And they say, and I quote, "As the number of bullets rises, our resilience rises higher. As the restrictions get tough, we get tougher. And as the explosions and the conflict goes high, our belief on our determination to never give up and fight for change goes higher." Although they both, under a chaudhary, so-called burqa, in a queue of hundreds of other women outside bakeries, wait every day for a generous person to donate them a piece of bread. Unfortunately, this story, although is a story of one woman, but belongs to many. Under the chaudhary that every Afghan woman is forced to wear, there is an engineer, a lawyer, a teacher, many of whom are left with no choice but to beg for a piece of bread. Now, it's the stories like this that makes us realize that if we are in safety, have a roof over our head, and enough food to get us through the day, clean water to drink, and opportunities to work and learn, then we are privileged. But many are not. Still, over 575 million people are in extreme poverty. Many millions are left homeless. Thousands of girls are being forced to marriage at young ages every day, and youth are leaving their countries seeking refuge in other countries to save their lives or seeking for better opportunities, knowing the high-level risk of losing their lives. Over 2 million girls are banned from attending schools in Afghanistan, and millions of others are in a state of uncertainty in Ukraine, Palestine, and Sudan, knowing that education is vital in reducing poverty, conflict, and climate crisis. Similarly, around 600 million people are estimated to face hunger in 2030. Millions of farmers and civilians will be affected and are being affected by the climate change. And so far, increasing inequalities are the clear signs addressing the urgency of the situation. Although we're just 6 years to 2030, but unfortunately, there's not much progress made across the SDGs. The countdown starts. It is the time to act and make right decisions because we are running late. And by making the right decisions, we should know that it is only possible to do so by involving the ones mostly affected by the issues in the decision-making processes. As youth, and in fact, the most vulnerable group, we need more than just a seat at a conference or a table to write a decision or a microphone to raise our voices. We need support. We need the government and the private sectors and civil societies to support us at all levels by involving us in all levels of meaningful decision-making processes and support our initiatives. Not only because we make up to 16% of the world's population or because we are the most educated generation so far, but because we have power. The power to dream for a better world and the courage and bravery to work and make these dreams a reality. We have the power to inspire and innovate. We're fearless, fresh, open-minded, and unfamiliar with terms impossible, and most importantly, the future citizens of the world that we are trying to save. For us, young generation, we do not wait for the right time. We create the right time to act and bring changes that we want to see in our societies. Meeting tens and thousands of other young leaders to collaborate from across the world, hearing their stories and hearing about their actions towards change, whether to shape the future of education or democracy or planet through their initiatives, small platforms, and campaigns, I realized that for us youth, we do not define change as a mind-blowing moment that shapes humankind's history. For us, the change starts with every small steps we take and every small improvement we make. We believe that drop by drop, the ocean is filled. Now in this room, we are a mix, bringing different cultures, ideas, solutions, and we are here for one common goal, and it is to see a better world. A world where everyone lives in equality, every soul flourishes, a world where all human beings, regardless of their religion, race, and are given the rights, where no one is left with no food or less food to consume, or clean water to drink, where no child has to go to work instead of going to school, and where poverty does not force youth to emigrate to other countries. A world where selfish decisions made by individuals and firms do not lead to climate crisis, taking everything from a poor farmer living in a rural area whose only source of income is their land and crops. And simply a world where no one is left behind. But to create this world, we must unite. We must not let the political borders divide us, because our similarities are far more than our differences. It is the time for the whole world to come together and become one, and work for our common goal of achieving a sustainable world. So dear change makers, I know we're all here for a story, to rewrite it. either for ourselves, for our communities, or for the world. So let's not forget that we are the writers for the new story, for the world and future generations, through our innovations, advocacy, and initiatives. Thank you.
Doy las gracias a la representante.
I thank the representative of their world and representative of the major group for children and youth. I would now briefly pause the meeting to allow the Secretary General and other distinguished guests to take their leave and for the podium to be rearranged for the conversation on youth for solutions and innovation.
Una vez más, doy las gracias.
Once again, I'd like to thank the Secretary General and Ms. Baharaki for having joined us this morning. Now, after the conversation that we will have today, I will we will hear a welcoming speech from the President of the 78th Session of the General Assembly, His Excellency Dennis Francis.
El foro celebrará.
The forum will now, friends, the forum will now hold a moderated conversation on youth for solutions and innovation. And it is my pleasure to welcome the distinguished speakers. Dr. Felipe Paulier, Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs of the United Nations. Welcome, Felipe. Ms. Umaima Makluk, Data Scientist at Intel and Data Focal Point of the Youth Science Policy Interface Platform of the Major Group for Children and Youth. Thank you. Ms. Terry Otieno, Co-Chair of the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction Stakeholder Engagement Mechanism and the Global Focal Point in the Working Group on Disaster Risk Reduction of the Major Group for Children and Youth. Ms. Narabene Farka Zainaba, telecom engineer and president of the Network of Sahelian Youth for Climate Mali and Youth for Climate Champion. And Ms. Justice Faith Betty, co-founder of the organization Revolutionnaire. I also welcome Ms. Augusta Saraiva, economic reporter and United Nations correspondent for Bloomberg News, who will be the moderator of this interactive dialogue, and I now invite her to conduct the discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Everyone. My name is Augusta Saraiva, and I'm the UN correspondent for Bloomberg News. You have no idea how exciting it is to see so many young faces in the building today. So let's start by giving yourselves a round of applause. Like I said, I'm so excited to welcome you in this chamber today, especially when there is such urgent need for brilliant, well-intended voices to be heard across the globe. The ECOSOC Youth Forum is happening in the context of multiple global challenges, from deadly conflicts to climate change to an urgent cost of living crisis. All of those are issues that impact young people. Many countries are still dealing with the aftermath of COVID-19. Others are grappling with climate events like never seen before. At the same time, the world is experiencing the highest number of violent conflicts since the Second World War, according to the UN itself. It's not an easy time to be growing up. It's not an easy time to be making choices. That's pretty discouraging, isn't it? Well, something tells me that if you consider this a lost war, you wouldn't be here today. So let me share a quick anecdote with you. The late Uruguayan writer Eduardo Galeano, one of my personal favorites, asked in one of his books what the point of utopia was. Utopia is on the horizon, he wrote. I approach 2 steps, it moves 2 steps. I walk 10 steps, and the horizon runs 10 steps further. No matter how much I walk, I'll never reach it. So, what good is utopia? Galeano asked. Well, it makes you walk. So that's my message for you today. We will not solve all of the world's issues in this room this week, but we can move closer to that. So let's use this week's Youth Forum for that, to walk toward utopia. With that in mind, let's get down to business. I'll start with one rapid fire question for all of our panelists so that we can warm up and get to know each other. But before I do so, I'll quickly introduce them. If you want to know more about them, like I said, it will be quick. And when a journalist says it's quick, it's actually quick. But if you want to check their full bios, which I do encourage you to do, please go on the ECOSOC Youth Forum website and you can check them there. So here with us today, we have Dr. Felipe Paulier, who was named the first UN Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs last year. Before that, he served as the Director General of the National Youth Institute of Uruguay. He also served in various political management positions. He's a doctor by trade. Also here with us today, we have Umaima Maklouk from Morocco. She's a data scientist at Intel and has been mostly involved in tech-driven initiatives. For the past 3 years, she has helped to lead the annual UN Datathon, which she's going to talk more about, a global data science competition for students and data professionals to work on solutions to address global challenges. Also here today, we have Zainaba Narabene from Mali. She's a telecommunications engineer with a passion for the environment. As head of the Sahelian Youth Climate Network in Mali, she implements concrete actions and participates in high-level international events like this one. Finally, we have Justice Faith from Canada. She is the co-founder of Revolutionnaire, a platform that empowers young people worldwide to take action in their local communities. Currently, Justice is collaborating with UN Women on an initiative at the intersection of art and activism for gender equality and racial justice to launch in 2025. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Can I get a round of applause for our panelists too? Some of them traveled really far to be here today. Thank you for that. So like I said, I'm going to start with one very brief question for all of you, and maybe we can go from left to right. But one of the things that sometimes we ask ourselves is that, yes, we do have many interesting conversations all the time, but how do we translate those into practical action? So that's my question for you. How do we translate the conversations and the ideas that are going to emerge from this forum into action once we go back to our countries, to our positions?
Perfect. What an incredible question. So let's be real here. We come to these forums brimming with ideas ready to tackle the world's greatest challenges, as the Secretary General so brilliantly outlined earlier this morning. But let's be honest, it can feel easy, like we're shouting into the void, like our voices, no matter how loud, can't get past the periphery. But here's the thing. That's exactly why the United Nations ECOSOC Youth Forum matters. We need spaces like this to come together, strategize, and remind ourselves that we're not just token voices. We are the future, and our future is at stake. Therefore, this week, I'm so excited that we're building this movement of young people who are demanding change. But to your question, how do we take the energy of this room and turn it into action? The real change starts at home. We register to vote, and then we vote. We leverage every platform at our disposal, from TikTok to town halls, to make sure that our demands are heard. We organize local campaigns that tackle local issues that are aligned with the 2030 agenda. And to the politicians, hear this. You don't just get our votes, you earn them. Our votes are hard-won and hinge on your unwavering commitment to safeguard our future. If you stand with us, if you fight with us, and if you work alongside us to forge a better future, then and only then will you get our support. So everyone, as we leave this forum this week, let's take a clear message back to every corner of all of our communities. Change cannot wait. It demands active participation from each and every one of us and decisive action from our leaders. We will hold our leaders accountable, not simply because we can, but because we must, for our future, for our planet, and for generations to come.
Alors, merci.
Thank you very much, Augusta, for that question. I will, of course, speak in French. It is a pleasure for me to be here at this youth forum representing Malian youth, but also youth from the Sahel on this panel, because I also have my sister from Morocco here as well. So I thank you for raising such a crucial point, because we must recognize that there are many forums and discussions, but the problem is the follow-up afterwards. There is a huge number of ideas coming out of these forums and that move on to high-level discussions, but then how do we translate those to concrete action? I think that in order to do this, we need to adopt a strategic approach, and we need to start with communication. We need to speak about these resolutions emanating from this forum, and we need to make sure that all stakeholders have access to this information. We are a minority here. We represent youth from around the world, but the youth of the world are not up to date on all of the resolutions coming out of these fora. And if that stays that way, we risk not seeing action at all levels. So we need to communicate these outcomes better. We must also establish very clear communication and collaboration channels between all stakeholders, and this means the youth, the international community, but also our leaders in decision makings. This is very important. In order to act, this communication and collaboration needs to be in place. And finally, we need to promote partnerships and instill a culture of accountability. This is essential in order to make sure that the momentum generated by this forum translates into meaningful change on the ground. I thank you.
Thank you, Augusta. Thank you, President of ECOSOC, and thank you to all the panelists, and specifically thank you all for being here. And to follow the tradition Augusta is told about uploading, I would like to say that we should give an applause to all the people and the staff that have been working for this event to take part. And this is not something easy to coordinate. And they have put a lot of love in this work. So I will ask everyone to give an applause to the staff that have been working for this job. So this is my first ECOSOC Youth Forum since being appointed as Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs. And I have the honor and the responsibility to lead the newly established United Nations Youth Office. And let me say that it's extremely powerful to see hundreds of young people from all over the world gathered together and joining this forum here in person, and thousands more than are joining us virtually, connected online. But maybe one reflection is that let's take into account in our participation during these days those that are not in this room. So those 1.9 billion young people that don't have the chance to be here. And let's feel ourselves committed. Let's feel ourselves what we are, and somehow that is privileged to be here. And let's take their perspectives into account, and let's bring their diversity, their beautiful diversity also in our discussions. In how to follow up and to continue what happens during these days, I will say that on our side, for ones that have a responsibility to work in the UN, it's about how we bring these voices into the continuity of dialogues and decision making during the process, and how we advance in establishing more spaces such as this in other discussions in the UN. We have this year the Summit of the Future, and the third day of ECOSOC is going to be focused on the discussions and on the perspectives of young voices around the summit. So our commitment from the office is to bring this and to connect the dots along the whole process of the UN. And on what every one of us can do, I think it's to follow up on this conversation once we are home, once we return to our daily responsibilities, and how we can connect what is being discussed here with the decision makers at our national, regional, and other spaces where you are part of. So thank you.
Well, I think, we covered a lot of the items about how to engage further after the forum, and I'd like to emphasize maybe 2 actions that we as youth can take. The first one is really to use the momentum to rally youth. You're going to get to engage and network with a lot of youth that come from diverse backgrounds and countries. So please take the time to connect with them and create potentially WhatsApp, Slack, whatever that is that you want, groups where you can have communications with them, and maybe right after this forum, you can set up a brainstorming session where you can discuss some of the ideas that you heard during the forum, and you can choose one that you are truly passionate about and try to bring it into life. That's how the UN Datathon came to life. That's how a lot of other initiatives came to life. You are the future of these ideas taken into life. The second key point is, key documents coming out of this forum. So the youth constituency is going to be working on the Voices of Youth reports, which will be a complement to the formal MGCY sectoral position paper to be prepared for the HLPF in July. So these are definitely, some key documents to work on. So if you can contribute in that space as well, that's really, really great. So I hope this can inspire you.
Thank you, everyone. That was truly inspiring. And I wanted to follow up on some of the things you said, but I want to start with you, Assistant Secretary General, because something that you mentioned called my attention. It's the fact that there are a lot of us here, and that's truly great, but not everyone is able to be here, right? And at the same time, just to bring back another data point that we talked about, the fact that right now in the world, we're seeing the highest number of conflicts, violent conflicts, since the Second World War, right? So it's a discouraging moment to be young, right? So how do we keep young people engaged when this is sort of our new normal?
So thank you, Augusta. First, I would say that we should change sometimes the narrative about young people and conflicts, no? So let's start by acknowledging the incredible and the important role young people have continued to play as promoters and as protectors of peace, especially in areas where we have an unimaginable impact of war, of conflict, and humanitarian catastrophes. So it is absolutely essential that as an international community, we continue to stand in solidarity with the millions of young people that are being impacted by violent conflict around the world. The Secretary General made his point very clear, and what's the position of the UN across conflicts, ongoing conflicts. But yet, what the young people remind us, and I'm sure that during the conversations these days, is that there is another way. There could be another way. And we know that one nation cannot solve these challenges alone. But we do feel that there's an inability of world leaders to work together and putting our common future in the center. So I do feel that there is a lot of power in this room in how to change the narratives and how to change also the commitments from our global leaders on peace and on these issues. So the Secretary General did mention that with our office and with a lot of support of other partners, we are promoting and we have launched an advocacy campaign in the form of an open letter from young people and allies calling for world leaders to take immediate action to make global policy making and decision making more representative to the communities they serve. So I invite you to join that conversation and on your capacity to replicate this message and to join it and to bring also your local, your national, your regional perspectives and your support on this advocacy tool. Because this year we have an opportunity about rebuilding trust, about restoring hope. The upcoming Summit of the Future is a crucial momentum for commitments, for transformations on multilateralism. And in this world of ongoing global conflicts, multilateralism is more urgent and needed than ever. So young people are watching, young people are supporting, and young people are definitely the ones that need to take the lead to transform this scenario. So I'm hopeful also, and I think that this room is hope for a lot of us.
Thank you so much. Zainab, I will turn to you next because I want to ask you about another issue that has been very urgent, and it's one that you've been focused a lot on. And I wanted to ask you specifically about climate change. I know Mali, your home country, has experienced these days record high temperatures, and it's something, well, the high temperatures are something we're seeing there and some other neighboring countries, but I'm sure a lot of us here are seeing a change in our home countries, and this is something that has us on edge. So I wanted to ask you how a lot of us think of climate change as a problem of the future, right? Yes, we have to act now, but so that things don't happen in the future. But when you are in fact seeing those things happen on the ground now, impacting your families, your country, how can we act now to stop this issue from becoming even worse?
Merci, Augusta.
Thank you, Augusta. Climate change is devastating. Every day, it destroys in our country and elsewhere. It it sows destruction and it sows death everywhere. So to respond to that question, I would say that to address these deadly heat waves, which also create a security risk, it is imperative to be very proactive. Augusta has said this. Mali is currently experiencing record temperatures of approximately 50 degrees Celsius. I think for you, you would consider that unlivable, and that's the case for us as well, and it kills hundreds of people weekly. So this proactive action, as I was saying, could involve measures such as investment in resilient infrastructure, setting up early warning systems, and emergency plans that are climate adapted, but also awareness raising among communities on addressing risks related to climate change. And I will focus on awareness raising and education. I think that is what we need today. Many of us do not respond appropriately to the effects of climate change and even these deaths that we have experienced lately. Many people are not aware that these are due to climate change. So we really need to raise awareness about this and to show each and every person and human being what their impact on the climate is and what actions that person can take to address climate change. So awareness raising and education in this area is very important. And I am referring primarily to education at the youngest level. At a certain age, it's difficult to change mentalities, but when we start from a young age, when we start from the beginning, this will enable them tomorrow to act in a very responsible manner when it comes to our environment. In addition to this, we require increased international cooperation with stakeholders and partners. This is important to build our population's capacities to mitigate the harmful impacts of climate change. And to conclude, I would also say that we need support and financing. Africa needs support and financing. The Sahel needs it, and Mali needs it. I thank you.
Merci. Thank you so much. I know so far this has been a very pessimistic panel, so I promise the next two questions will be about hope. So, Umaima, I wanted to ask you about something you are very suited to answer, which is technology. So a lot of us here grew up with technology. A lot of us here don't know a world without technology. I see a lot of people on their phones and computers here. So I wanted to ask you, at the same time that for a lot of us, technology is so ingrained in who we are, we still see a lot of gaps when it comes to access to technology. So how can we leverage technology and how can we close some of those gaps to make sure our generation is making the best use of it?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking this important question, Augusta. I have to say, despite the fact that 95% of us live close to regions where there should be access to internet, only 66% of us actually do have this access. It's very critical to work together through a multi-stakeholder approach to be able to bridge this gap. And youth can actually do a lot in that space. First of all, because we're all very connected and also very involved in this topic. Access to technology should be a universal right. And there are really, I would say maybe three scales at which we could engage. The first one is to advocate for equitable policies through lobbying local governments, as well as institutions. And this can go through alliances such as the Edison Alliance, which is, a multi-stakeholder approach between the private sector, institutions, as well as the civil society, and helps basically bring internet access to 1 billion people by 2025. So we need more of these initiatives and alliances. The second scale is truly the most important one. It's partnerships with the industry. A lot of us work in tech, or maybe we have relationships with tech, and they are the ones who own these technologies, and they are the ones who can actually design more affordable and inclusive technologies in the future, making, for example, subsidized laptops or accesses to the to the internet that would be cheaper. And we really need to make sure that we're part of this shift. And I'm talking about, for example, an innovation called the fixed wireless access, which is using radio wavelengths to enable a broader network access. And we need to have more of these innovations. Like, it should not be all about businesses. It should also be about leveraging tech and their power and their funding into designing newer, more accessible technologies. And lastly, and the easiest way for us as youth to engage is obviously at the community level. We can all volunteer 1 or 2 hours of our time, talk to our local government, see where there's a gap, which zones in our countries need to have some training and education around technology. And there are a lot of nonprofit organizations such as Codex, who goes into war-conflicted regions such as Gaza and Ukraine to teach people who are, children who are now out of school, to leverage those tools to be able to get connected, get access to education and healthcare. So yeah, there are definitely a lot of ways in which youth can get involved, and I do encourage you to try to find ways in which you can get involved, especially at the local level. Thank you, Augusta.
Thank you. Okay, so hope is a word that has come up quite a bit this morning, and that's good, because we need that to put things in practice. So Justice, I'll turn to you now, because you're someone who has worked in the private sector, you're someone who has worked with government, with NGOs, so you've met a lot of eager people along the way, a lot of people who had hope. So can you share some of the lessons you learned from some of those people? What gives you the most hope?
Yes, well, what gives me the most hope is young people, just like all of us here today and those joining virtually. But in my work firsthand with young change makers, I've been so privileged to witness the extraordinary courage and innovation of young activists, especially those who are tackling urgent global challenges head on. Their stories not only inspire, but also teach profound lessons in resilience, collaboration, and most importantly, the transformative power of collective action. One of my favorite stories to share is of a young environmentalist who I met. His name is Elijah, and he embarked on a journey to the Arctic. There, he conducted studies on contamination levels and the impact of these contamination levels on Indigenous communities. His story is a powerful reminder of how deeply personal and also scientifically rigorous activism can be, and also how crucial it is to intertwine our efforts with those directly affected by environmental issues. Then there are the inspiring young people who joined forces with my sister and me and corporations to feed 2,000 people in a single day. This example shines a light on the remarkable outcomes that can be achieved when we bridge the gap between grassroots initiatives and corporate capabilities, channeling vast resources into meaningful action. And of course, let's not forget the iconic vision of 4 million young people taking to the street during the climate strikes. And really, this massive mobilization illustrates the sheer force of youth united for a common purpose, proving that when we stand together, our actions can echo across the globe, and leaders will listen and take action. So from these narratives, the core lessons that I've learned is that no dream is too big. When you equip yourself with a community, knowledge, and take action with unwavering dedication, we often like to say that dreams fuel revolutions, and it's our commitment to learning, to fostering connections, and to persistent action that allows these dreams to be transformed into lasting change. So to all of you, as we stand here together today at the United Nations ECOSOC Youth Forum, let's embody this spirit, this idea as young people that we dream boldly, we learn eagerly, and we act fiercely. Together, we're not just dreamers, we are doers, committed to taking action. We're not just hopeful, but we together are powerful. So with each step that we take, we're not just shaping a better world, we're actually building it. And let this be our message, our mission, and our legacy.
Thank you. Assistant Secretary General, one of the issues that your office has been focusing on since it was founded last year is the current state of mental health among young people, right? We're a generation that grew up during a pandemic. A lot of us are entering the labor force for the first time in this post-pandemic world. A lot of us come from countries that still haven't recovered from the pandemic. So can you tell us a little bit more about what your office has been doing to address mental health and how and what kind of impact that has on our generation?
Thank you, Augusta. I will switch to Spanish because it's my native language, and I think that there are a lot of Spanish speakers in the room. And Augusta herself speaks very good Spanish because she was born in a city very close to my country, back in Uruguay. And I think that's why she brought it to the conversation Galeano also, as one of her favorite writers. So, la salud mental.
Mental health, mental well-being is an especially key issue and a personal issue for myself as well. And perhaps it has to do with my training and my personal training as a pediatrician. But furthermore, the opportunity that I had to work heading the national policy in my country with respect to youth, there the topic of mental health was something that came up in all of the conversations and all of the spaces where we listened to and worked with young people. And my experience as well at the level of the regional youth platform in the Ibero-American Youth Organization, that was a theme that came up constantly, a priority issue in many of the countries in the region. And in the 4.5 months that I've been here as the head of this office, with the possibility of sharing with young people from all regions around the world, and having traveled to places that are far from where we are, but that are very close to the reality of many people, this is a topic that comes up constantly, a topic that emerges from intersectionality, from those young people, conversations with those young people that are working on climate change, in topics with young people concerned about educational issues, the impact that this has, and when we talk about unemployment and the lack of access to employment, which is 3.5 times greater for young people at the global level than among the general population. So these are all issues of concern to young people. 1 out of every 7 young people is experiencing some kind of condition linked to their state of mental health. And many times these are not diagnosed and they're not treated. But unfortunately, the discussions that we hear at the global level and the discussion, the focus of public policy on mental health continues to be one of stigmatization. And it's important to have these conversations openly. It's important to have these conversations from a youth perspective, because for young people, this topic is no longer stigma. It's the young people that are pushing for a transformation at the national and regional level when it comes to this area. Mental health is a necessary condition, not only for life itself, but to develop ourselves and to fulfill ourselves freely. And undoubtedly, it's a question which is defined by many factors, and that's why it also requires an intersectoral discussion, a discussion which has to involve communities, families, health care systems, as well as responses that exist for young people. It has to involve education, and especially young people being partners and not necessarily the recipients of a policy. And there I believe that our office has to keep this issue among their priorities. We have to push for the system to create even more space for this. And I had the opportunity to attend an ECOSOC meeting in Chile, especially on intersectionality, the intersectionality of the new work, the new technology, and its effect on well-being. And our commitment is to move forward so that there are commitments and national policies, investments when it comes to studying the pathology of mental health and how to prevent mental health. to move as well in those with those commitments that there be more support and services that are not stigmatized and that are reliable for young people. And lastly, and above all, to involve young people themselves in this dialogue, to involve young people as protagonists and as partners, not only to promote this conversation, but also to find the solutions that are needed. Thank you very much.
We only have 5 minutes left, so let's see how far we can go. But I did want to ask a question about gender equality, because like I said at the beginning, it's not as usual to see this many young people in the room, but it's also not as usual to see so many diverse faces culturally, in terms of gender. So, Umaima, I wanted to save this question for you because you're in the tech sector, which has traditionally been a male-dominated field, and you're a rock star. So I wanted to ask you, what have you learned by working in the tech sector, by advancing the rights of women in that sector, and what can we learn from that?
Well, thank you so much, Augustine. Yes, I wanted to point out the fact that it's really amazing to see such a diverse panel, of course, but also such a diverse presence of youth from all around the world. So thank you so much for coming and dedicating some time, and big applause to all of you. With regards to the tech sector in particular, it's really crazy to think about the fact that only 26% of the workforce in the tech space is women, despite the fact that actually a little bit more than 30% of them go into engineering schools. So some of them actually quit and go into other professions and kind of are afraid to go into the tech sector or find maybe something else. And I think it's not just about fairness. It's also about actually unlocking the full potential of the tech workforce, driving economic growth and fostering innovation by having a diverse panel of people, regardless of their gender. That's really what should be put into perspective. I think, based on my little experience, there are multiple actions that we can take. First, we must confront biases and stereotypes and maybe have a blind recruiting process so that, regardless of the gender, it's really based on merits and on experiences. Second, obviously, companies must commit to equal pay, and there are countries like Iceland who have implemented back in 2017 the equal pay law, which prevents companies from not being transparent about paying the same amount of money to someone doing the same job, regardless of the gender again. Third, we need more STEM education and mentorship programs. There are lots through universities and education. We need to do this early on and also confront social pressures in the global south where it's not important for women to go to school. And, I know we had a great intervention about women in Afghanistan, and I think we really need to take this into account. We need to make sure that young girls want to go into tech, are not afraid to go into tech. It's not too hard. If they want to do it, they should go for it. And lastly, everyone should advocate for gender equality. I've seen a lot of men allies in my company, and that really makes a huge difference in advancing things. We are all equal, and we should all advocate for each other's rights because that's, these are universal rights. So I hope that each one of you is inspired to work on this at your local scale, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it seems like I have 20 seconds left, so I will have to wrap this up. But I just wanted to tell you, it seems like we were able to bring up a lot of important topics, and our panelists are going to be here, so definitely pick their brains. And I feel like if there's one message from this panel, it's that collaboration is key, there's still hope, and we have to translate the conversations and the ideas that come out of here into practice. So let's keep that in mind, and let's check back in a year from now to see how far we got, if we moved just a little bit closer to utopia. Thank you so much. Agradezco.
I'd like to thank our distinguished speakers for their valuable insights that they've shared with us. And of course, I would like to thank our moderator for skillfully guiding this discussion. And now we are going to wait just a few seconds for the President of the General Assembly to arrive. He's coming in. We're going to receive the President of the General Assembly with applause.
Invito ahora
I now invite to the forum to hear an address by the President of the 78th session of the General Assembly, His Excellency Dennis Francis.
Madam President of the Economic and Social Council, Your Excellency Ambassador Paula Narvaez, esteemed youth leaders, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to join you at the 2024 ECOSOC Youth Forum. And it is humbling indeed to be the next speaker following this truly inspiring and dynamic young leaders meeting, bringing youth from all around the world. Today we are here to listen to your innovative ideas on how we can reinforce the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and work smarter to end the crushing scourge of poverty blighting our societies. My message to you is straightforward. We need your talents and your engagement. You are the future of multilateral cooperation. No matter your discipline or your chosen course of study. Eradicating poverty, including extreme poverty, in all its forms and dimensions, is not only the greatest global challenge we face, it is an absolute requirement for delivering on the central transformative promise of the 2030 Agenda, to leave no one behind. As the abounding energy in this chamber makes clear, you, the world's 1.2 billion young people, are not simply waiting for change to happen. Young people today are taking action to solve the complex challenges affecting their communities and making a real difference. For example, young business leaders in West and Central Africa are boosting food security by using circular strategies in the areas of aquaculture and poultry farming. In China, young entrepreneurs are building robots to clean polluted waters. In Bangladesh, they are empowering local communities through sustainable tourism. And in Kuwait, Fatima Alizela found EcoStar, a non-profit that recycles trash from homes, restaurants, and schools. One of many young people across her region who are leading the way to a more sustainable future. As President of the General Assembly, I am not only committed to working with young people to promote sustainable development, I am committed to learning from them. You are here at a pivotal moment. This year's Youth Forum is coinciding with the General Assembly's first ever Sustainability Week, which I am convening here at the United Nations headquarters. Our aim? To supercharge action across the 2030 Agenda by promoting sustainability across all activities of the global economy. Tomorrow, April 17th, as part of Sustainability Week, I will be hosting an interactive Ask PGA conversation with youth. I am eager to hear directly from young people about where we are going wrong, what we are getting right, and how we can elevate the ideas of young people to shape the sustainability conversation. I'm also challenging everyone to join our Choose Sustainability campaign, to be loud and proud on social media about the actions that you are taking to create an inclusive, equitable, and sustainable future for all. I repeat, for all. We recognize that young people are already living with the consequences of our action and our inaction. The ideas you generate in the ECOSOC Youth Forum will keep us accountable as we prepare for the pivotal event on the UN calendar, the Summit of the Future in September. Its anticipated outcome, the Pact of the Future, is a pact between the generations, and young people are actively engaging in this process to ensure that it is inclusive and representative. Together with a global digital compact and a declaration on future generations, all three of these documents will represent a formidable investment in young people and define our shared future for decades to come. We are indeed at a moment of breathtaking change. We need your determined leadership and your vision more than ever as we work towards a future that is more safe, more just, and more sustainable for all. I wish you a productive 2 days and very much look forward to hearing the fulsome harvest of your important discussions. I thank you.
Doy las gracias.
I thank the President of the General Assembly for his statement. And the forum will now hold a spotlight session entitled Youth in a World Without Poverty. And I would like to warmly welcome our distinguished speakers.
Porque van a hablar desde allá. ¿Ok? Como quieran. En primer lugar,
First of all, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Yi Jun Mok, the young leader of Generation 17 of the United Nations Development Program. He's also hearing. Okay.
Doy entonces la palabra.
So I now give the floor.
Here?
So I'm the holy. So I'm gonna present the. So I'm the holy. So I'm the different person. She's a moderator.
Por favor.
Yes. Okay, can Marlet come up? Marlet!
Okay.
Do apologize for those difficulties with the run of show. Her Excellency, Paula Neves, President of the Economic and Social Council, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and most importantly, my fellow youth, attending in person, lighting in virtually, and everywhere you are. Let me start with a question. What is the opposite of poverty? If the first words to come to your mind were wealth or abundance, you wouldn't be wrong. But wealth and poverty are two extremes, and the World Bank rightly points out that multidimensional poverty goes beyond monetary poverty and should account for access to education as well as basic infrastructure. In this vein, the eradication of poverty is not simply about making everyone rich. The opposite of poverty is the dignity of a meaningful life, the ability to meet your needs and those of your loved ones with hard work and your own two hands. The heart of this dignity is two complementary, interlocking enablers: education and employment. A quality education provides you with the skills and knowledge you need to thrive, while decent work and employment give you self-sufficiency and a pathway to contribute to society. But we often think of the two as separate: education in the classroom, employment in the workforce. Separating the two ignores the reality that opportunity is not evenly distributed. But by bridging the gap in the transition from school to the workforce, we can help to break the cycle of multidimensional poverty. First, we can do this by building formal and informal support networks within communities. To help young people transition into the workforce and thrive, mentorship can be invaluable. Advisory Singapore, the charity that I run, we operate Singapore's largest careers-based mentorship, allowing any young person to apply to be matched one-to-one with a mentor in their field of interest. And we've delivered over 14,000 hours of mentorship since 2020. Such formal and informal networks can play a big role in closing the opportunity gap that young people face. Second, we can do this by bringing schools and companies, the realms of education and employment, closer together. Through the Advisory Educators Roundtable, a platform that we run with the National University of Singapore and Deloitte, we create spaces for teachers from high school and up to learn about industry trends and engage with industry professionals to inform how they prepare their students to transition to the working world. Teachers who are every day on the education front line must be supported in understanding what companies need in the workforce, and companies likewise must appreciate the educational context in which they hire. By closing the gap between education and employment, we can help to ensure that every young person, regardless of the background they come from, has a fair shot at building a meaningful life. Thank you.
Doy las gracias al.
Thank you. Mr. Yujun Mok, Generation 17, young leader. We will now hear from Ms. Malet Reddy, who is a member of the Global Youth Caucus for Decent Jobs and Sustainable Economies of the Major Group for Children and Youth.
Standing here today, I'm fueled by a vision where youth like us lead the way in ending poverty. My advocacy has brought me to platforms like World Bank Youth Summit, to high-level political forum, to representing African Union diaspora youth in initiative and at the Policy Forum Development, where I teamed up with youth representatives to shape and recommend policies. I believe initiatives led by us youth are catalysts for innovation, inclusivity in policy making. Through working in grassroots cause, partnership with governments, NGOs, international organizations, decision and policymakers, we can amplify our impact and create lasting change. Let me share my personal story as an example of poverty, close to my heart. Period poverty. Many girls and women around the world miss school and daily duties because of this poverty. They resort to unsafe methods to manage their poverty, worsening their situation. Let me ask you a question. How, when is the last time you heard a young girl using a cow dung, ash, dry grass, and socks in 2024 as her period product? Period poverty hinders women from participating in efforts to reduce poverty. If we address this issue, we make significant steps towards a better future for all. When I learned about the solvable poverty, I created a campaign called I Care, collaborated with Jagnet campaign to develop a solution, the Birthday Dignity Bucket, partnering with local manufacturers like Ade. We have helped hundreds of thousands of women with sustainable period products. We weren't just providing products, we were empowering young girls to stay in a school and break the cycle of poverty, and women to engage in fully in solving poverty and introducing eco-friendly solutions. Solving period poverty doesn't need a magic, but a holistic approach and collective efforts. If a few of us can make such a difference, imagine what we all can achieve together. Through Birke, we have engaged stakeholders, catalyzed actions, and we aim to reach 1 million girls by 2030. Yes, the cycle of poverty is stubborn. It might feel like we are scooping water from the ocean with fork, but trust me, we will fill the bucket. I finalize my speech by highlighting youth engagement is not a buzzword. It's necessity. You're not alone. We are united in this fight. Let's advocate for investment in youth and gender-focused programs, make inclusive decisions, and use technology and innovation to empower marginalized youth. Together, we can create a world where poverty is just a thing in the past. Thank you for your attention.
I thank the member of the Global Youth Caucus for Decent Jobs and Sustainable Economies of the Major Group for Children and Youth. We are now going to briefly pause the meeting to allow the podium to be rearranged for the session on progressing from poverty to prosperity, youth as agents of change. And I would ask you to remain seated, please, while we reorganize the meeting.
No, so they're gonna be seated and then you're. Wait, I think I'll be able to introduce you now. Yeah, so can I sit and then you? Yes. Where should I sit? Just here. Then I can. Yes, yes. Can I go? Oh. Okay, perfect. I do that. So yeah, I'm gonna start. Yeah.
El foro
The forum will now begin its session entitled Please Take Your Seats. The session entitled Progressing from Poverty to Prosperity, Youth as Agents of Change. And it is my pleasure to welcome the following distinguished speakers. I would ask for your attention, please, and please take your seats. Yes, the session is going to begin. I would ask you to be seated. Ms. Francine Pickup, a Deputy Assistant Administrator and Deputy Director of the Bureau for Policy and Program Support of the United Nations Development Program, who will deliver opening remarks. Mr. Elliot Harris Reyes, Head of International Community Programs in Latin America at Citibank, Mexico. Ms. Benedicta Mundele Kuvuna, Founder and Manager of Surprise Tropical. Ms. Mwinjina Chinga, Member of the African Youth Commission and of the Commonwealth Youth Human Rights and Democracy Network. Mr. Abubakar Sadiq Miakel, Co-Founder of the ILEM. Ms. Asami Segundo, Aikala and Youth Leader from the Philippines. And Ms. Lopa Banerjee, Director of the Civil Society Division of UN Women, who will deliver the closing remarks. And I would also like to welcome the moderators, Ms. Sophia Fei Yachen, Global Focal Point of the Global Youth Caucus for Decent Jobs and Sustainable Economies of the Major Group for Children and Youth, and Mr. Murilo Fragoso Slomka de Oliveira, Founder of the Blossom Project of Walter Wells for Africa. And I will now invite the moderators to conduct the discussion.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Hi, welcome to the first thematic session on SDG 1. Je m'appelle Sophia.
My name is Sophia. It's an honor to be your co-moderator here today.
My name is Murilo. I'm an education activist from Brazil. This is my first time at the ECOSOC Youth Forum. It's my pleasure to moderate this session with Sophia. A warm welcome to everyone.
So let's invite Francine Pickup to start with the opening remarks.
Your Excellencies, dear young leaders, ladies and gentlemen, it's really wonderful to see the UN so full of young people this week and to see this chamber also full of young people. And it's absolutely that hope and energy that you all represent and that you bring that we need right now for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly Goal 1 around eradicating poverty. It was actually not long ago, I think last week, that the Human Development Report that UNDP launched said that while development is strong and progress is being made, there is more inequality between countries than we've seen before, and the poorest and most vulnerable are being left behind, and young people are disproportionately affected by that. Addressing shared global challenges that we have today, like climate change, like pandemics, like inequality, requires collective action. And you as young people need to be at the center of that collective action, and you need to have a seat at the table of decision making. Young people, particularly those from marginalized and unrepresented groups, are facing multiple challenges, and women and girls are also more impacted than most and at increased risks of poverty. But amidst all these challenges that we face, there is resilience. And at UNDP, we really believe that young people, when we work with young people, it's not just about demographics, it's not just about numbers. You really represent the talent, ideas, skills, and rights to sustainable development. We are really committed to looking at innovative ways that we can engage you in a meaningful way in decision-making processes for change. One example that I wanted to share with you is how we invest in Africa's youth and the support to the flagship interventions that can make the African Continental Free Trade Agreement work for Africa's young people to help them grow their businesses. This is translated into support to over 10,000 young entrepreneurs across the African continent. You, the young people in this room, have so much potential, and you've proved that your skills, experience, and innovative ideas are crucial to solving today's complex problems. Policymakers, practitioners, young delegates, we need to take advantage of these 3 days to share knowledge, build partnerships, and develop sustainable solutions to address poverty, especially in fragile and crisis contexts. At UNDP, we will continue to work through initiatives and programs like Generation 17 to turn the tide on poverty and create a world where young people are empowered to reach your full potential. I look forward to hearing more about the work that goes on over these next 3 days and the recommendations that come out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francine. So now it's time for a video from the UNDP.